Hey, it's Chris, Legion of Games. Did you know I've seen prices for the average paid preview of games going on Kickstarter? Not even big ones, but regular ones go for a couple $100. I should really get into a different market here. So, it's the board game news, the one you've been waiting for, the one you love. Smash the thumb, it tells YouTube and it tells other board gamers out there that this is a video worth watching. I'm bringing you the announcements you may have missed, I'm bringing you the announcements you may have seen, but with my twist on them and my thoughts on them and reactions immediately, as well as a glimpse into the hotness and why things are on the hotness as well, all wrapped up into one. The challenge, can we get to 500 thumbs on a video? I don't think we can, prove me wrong. Let's go right into it, let's do this. Look, first up, I gotta touch on it. You've probably seen it, you probably heard about it, you probably have an opinion on it. Viticulture World Cooperative Expansion. Now, if you haven't heard about it, Stonemaier Games' latest release, upcoming in the next month or so-ish, had a little controversy. There was some concern about conquistadors and the cards and the elements that were portraying them in a positive light. Thinker Themer put out a video on it, and the reaction, which was timed with the Stonemaier reaction, so it was a coordinated effort to reflect some thought on changes of the game, and it's been met across the board with both sides of the aisle, as you would expect. It's a cooperative expansion for a very well thought of worker placement game. And so just from the game aspect alone, very interesting. Intriguing because we don't see a lot of cooperative worker placements. And it's even interesting me. Now, I'm in the lottery for whether or not I'm going to get a review copy, but I think this is always an interesting topic just because of how Stonemaier does their reviews, if you will. I got a copy of Libertalia late. They must have had extra copies, and so it went to the wide net. But normally, if you're not familiar with how Stonemaier Games does their reviews, they send out a mass email to the 400 or so reviewers on their list, and they say, we're going to select a certain random number of them, something like 36. I think it was this last time. And this is, one of the things that comes up, and then we randomly choose 36. Now, what was interesting about this, and what I noticed, especially with Libertalia last time, especially so, was that by the time I got the email talking about the random generator for Libertalia, you already had half a dozen of the biggest channels already basically having their content out. And this was no exception. Apparently, Thinker Themer had a copy of this for weeks, maybe? And enough time to go over it, enough time to produce a video well in advance of the release in the first place. And if they have a copy, I imagine several of the other big channels, I bet Quackalope, Board Game Co., Dice Tower, How It Plays, Before You Play, all of those people have copies too. And so it's just interesting how that happens. I wish it was truly random. Everybody has an equal shot. Well, everybody doesn't have an equal shot. So again, it's just a very interesting dynamic, though I always will give them kudos because they do, open it up for far wider gatewise than any other company I have ever seen. So I give them kudos from that. And it was weird because the Board Game Geek discussion on this is usually the more nuanced of all of the social medias. But for some reason, the Reddit thread on this was the only one that I saw talking about both sides of the argument, rather than just Twitter, which was on one side, Board Game Geek, which was on one side, and, YouTube, which is always on a whole nother side in and of itself. So it was an interestingly timed video. There were a few interesting points raised about that aspect of things. I'm not going to talk about it personally too much, but I'll just say points were very much well articulated on both sides of the arguments, not just from a purely positive, not from a trolling side of things, but truly some critical thinking aspects. So if you want to go check those out, you can go check those out, but that's why we're talking about it first and foremost. The other biggest news of the week, in case you missed this, was, well, in case this isn't apparent, this is Twilight Imperium's 25th anniversary edition. The epic roll and write experience for Twilight Imperium. No, this isn't April Fool's. This is actually going to be a real product. How does that make you feel? I'm super excited. This may be the only time I'm ever going to be able to play Twilight Imperium, the game, in my lifetime. So, color me super intrigued. Real product, folks. Real product. Again, gonna be cool. So how does that make you feel from FFG? Are you intrigued by that? Are you turned off by it? I mean, talk about crunchy rolling rights, right? So it's going to be interesting regardless. I didn't see a release date, but I would imagine if they're announcing it, it's going to be out this year. So take that for what you will. Add it to your wish list on Board Game Geek if you want. Next up from IV Games, they are going to be launching an expansion to their deck builder, which has relatively been a good success from the retail side of things, but especially the Kickstarter edition is in high demand. They're launching an expansion called Titan, which is going to have, I believe, a campaign mode as well, 3-in-1 sort of expansion. And this is going to be launching on July 10. So if you're interested, if you missed it the first time around, I would imagine, as tend to be the trends nowadays, you will see a reprint of the Kickstarter edition, which has a few extras. And if you missed it and you are still trying to figure out whether or not it's right for you, I will be having a review coming out shortly talking about that as well. The different spin, the pros, the cons, the will you like it, what may you not like about it. As always, in the next couple weeks as well. Hopefully sooner rather than later. I'm a little backed up on the review retail side of things. So that will be coming out. Stay tuned. More details I'm sure will be coming. Maybe even from yours truly over realistically, next 2.5 months. So there you go. Speaking of expansions, we are also going over to Board Game Table's Twitter because they recently announced, in case you missed the original, Kabuto Sumo, which has also been in hot demand as the dexterity insect-based sumo game where you push off your opponent's wood pieces from a circular sumo table. Well, they're offering now another Kickstarter campaign, as Board Game Tables has done with some of the smaller indie games. They have combined 3-in-1, and they're doing similarly in the next, I think, about month or so with Kabuto Sumo Total Mayhem. And I love this because they are going full on leaning into the wrestling aspect of things and saying, if you're familiar with like professional wrestling, the gimmick, the show, the long-standing, side note here, as long as you view professional wrestling as a drama, much like other shows, with the physical wrestling being part of it, as opposed to just, the main aspect, it's not fake, it's scripted, just like everything else. Anyway, this is leaning into it, as it says here, the components including coffins, torches, and I believe they even talk about like chairs, if you're familiar with like the chair shot thing with professional wrestlers. Anyway, so that's cool. That's going to be awesome. I can't wait to see what else Board Game Tables has with it. I believe they announced the other two games, but I'm blanking off the top of my head, and I'm not going to waste your time to go look them up while I do this. But just know that, again, they're going to put out another trio of very enticing games that's probably going to do very well, because this one has been very, very well received and very well thought of already. And so if you missed it the first time around, I'm bet, again, like I said with the other one, with Moonrakers, you can probably get it as well, all combined. There you go. That's that. Now, next up, Plan B Games. You may know them from this Century series. They have announced their next game being released is called Maui, with, art that is applicable in that sense. The gist of it is sort of a pattern building game where you are randomly placing out umbrellas at the beginning of the game, and you have a total of 13 spots where you can be placing beach towels on the beach. Cover the umbrella, get bonus points. Take sand dollars, or take a towel. The towel, though, needs to match the one on the rightmost so that you're going across and creating these patterns and set collections-ish. Now, the umbrellas are going to have a little bit different function. Also, you don't see pictured here, but they're going to be crabs. Crabs. You've got crabs. Anyway, you've got crabs that you're going to be dealing with that are going to either take up locations or are going to make you lose points. Because, if you're on the beach and a crab pinches you, right, that's not a positive thing. So that's going to be interacting there. Check out the Board Game Geek description for a little bit further detail. But I would assume, as with all of the other Plan B games, like in the Century line that we have seen from them, that this is going to be going to retail, not crowdfunding. But, money, loan, free overhead, wouldn't shock me either. But I've not seen them do that in the past, so it would be a first for them, I think. Next up, also speaking on the retail side of things, are you familiar with another roll and write? This is On Tour. On Tour has been announced to be taking another tour, because this time you are going to be touring in New York and Paris. Now, there are not a lot of details on what the differences are, but if you're familiar with the basic game, and what you're doing in this game is you have two 10-sided dice, numbers 0 through 9, obviously, where you roll them and you say get a 4 and a 7, which gives you numbers 47 and 74. You have to place those onto your map, in a certain location designated by that round. And then at the end of the game, you have to make a sequential numbering as much and as far as you can to create the longest consecutive tour in order to get the most points that you can at the end of the game. Now, on the Board Game Geek description, they do give just the vaguest of new things that you're going to see on there. New abilities called riverboats and ferries to help you tour the city and become a jazz legend. And again, that's about it though. So we'll kind of see what other special things they have in store. I believe On Tour went on Kickstarter on tour the first time around, and I would imagine that this is going to do the same. Next up, a very, 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 very interesting thing from Wyrd Games. We haven't talked about Wyrd Games in a while, since one of the best games came out of 2021 was Vagrant Song. And in case you missed it, it's sort of flown under the radar. It almost flew completely by me, but I saw a mention of it on Twitter. And that's because Vagrant Song is getting an expansion. They are working on an expansion as we speak. If you have not gotten a chance to play this, this is probably one of the best dungeon crawls I've ever played. And I give it a lot of kudos, and it's doing a lot of things in a different way. And there's a reason that it should be on your list if you like those things. And it has a campaign, and it's just easy to get to the table over session after session. So if you missed it, obviously the printings are ongoing, and I know it's been intermittently sold out. But, you know, if you really want to check it out, there you go. Early stages, more about Encore soon. Do you remember this game, Crash Octopus from Itten Games? Well, it just got picked up by the US publishers Simon and Funbot Games. So, the game that has been relatively very sought after from a dexterity different side of things is going to get a North American release. Now, there's no more details on it, but if you were looking for it before and could not find a copy, nary, twice the price of the original game, just wait and you will be rewarded. There you go. Now, interestingly enough, next we have another import game coming over to America, or just being available for you to order, from Saashi and Saashi, the Japanese developers who do games you may have heard of, like Let's Make a Bus Route. Let's Make a Bus Route, the dice game, that game. And so this is another in the line called Before the Guests Arrive. This one reminds me a little bit more aesthetically also of the elevator one. I can't remember the name of that one offhand. I'm doing really good here. But also Remember Our Trip. And this is more of a set collection game where you are one of the members of the family cleaning up the household before the guests arrive, right? I mean, that picture right there is about all we know. When the guest card appears, the game ends and you collect your points based on the sets that you have. That's all I know, but Saashi and Saashi puts out really, really solid games. They're probably one of, if not the most well-known Japanese design publishers out there. So if you have any interest in this, I suggest that you give it a look-see when it becomes available, because Saashi and Saashi recently, with the release of Let's Make a Bus Route, the dice game, now ships directly to North America. That's how I got the dice game in the first place. So if you're interested, there you go. Now, one last thing before we go over to the Hotness listing, because there's a few crossovers between the Hotness and the news and noteworthy. First up, or last up, I guess, Forgotten Waters. In case you forgot about Forgotten Waters, the pirate-based campaign game with more of a, I don't want to say party-esque feel, but social game. It has now some DLC that you can get for $10. So in case you didn't get enough out of it in the first place, Plaid Hat Games has a new scenario, a new big scenario with over 100 new events going in that. And for $10 to refresh the game and to be able to get to play it more, I'd say that's a pretty sweet deal. So there you go. Now we're going to skip over to the Hotness combined with the news. Mindclash Games recently announced their latest title is going to be something called Septima, where Septima actually defined is the seventh born. And so I'm not sure how that's going to tie in, but basically you're witches in a coven in this game. Septima being, I guess, the name of the witch who you are trying to succeed as the leader of all of the witches, and your coven you are trying to make the best. Now, they've talked about it already being a little bit on the lighter side for Mindclash, one of the lightest potentially, which actually has me more intrigued because their other titles have all been, relativistically speaking, too heavy for me to have serious interest in. And so when you announce that this is going to be that line of weight, color me interested all of a sudden. I like it because even when you go over to the Board Game Geek page here, you can see they give you a little bit more text than what you normally get. Simultaneous action selection, positive player interaction. revolving around simultaneous secret selection of one of 9 actions every single turn. You get a bonus, though, if it's chosen by multiple players, but it also raises suspicion of townsfolk. This is super, super cool. Then the best part about this, and I wasn't kidding about that, it's most accessible title to date, intuitive theme, quick to teach and set up, less than 2 hours to play even with 4 players. Boom. You got me. You got your hooks into me, Mind Clash. Mind Clash, I'm going to put a petition out right now. Send me a copy so I can talk about it for the Kickstarter campaign or the GameFound campaign. I'm going to put my petition out there right now because if I don't ask, I'm never going to have a shot. Probably not going to get it anyway, but I want to try it as a non-Mind Clash person. Make me a convert. Show me to the masses. Anyway, but this is something cool. I like this. I like the art. I like the theme. I like the mechanism there. I love simultaneous action selection. And again, under 2 hours, especially at lower player count, it's going to be probably closer to 1. Boom, I'm in on this one. I'm going to be hard looking at this one when it comes to crowdfunding. Also going to crowdfunding at some time in the distant future, Arcs. Arcs is slowly releasing the Cole Wehrle Leader Games project of Oath in Space, if you will, Designer Diaries, and the third one just came out this past week, always raising very interesting discussion around it, with part of it being there's going to be a trick-taking element, and the comparisons are going to be made about, or they're being talked about in the sense that they will be made to the other trick-taking area control-esque game that's been out recently in the last year that has received relatively critical acclaim of Brian Boru, a game I'm still trying to get in my collection. And so again, as a multi-session, short-ish game, Oath, but again, maybe like Septima, more accessible leader game, I'm all in on this one. I'm all in on this one. So again, I'm, too small for leader games to acknowledge, probably, but I'll put my hat in the ring if I can ever do, justice for any of these games. I'm slowly learning Root, and I am a horrible Root player. That's all I've learned so far. There you go, though. That's why it's on the list, and they're going to be slowly releasing these, I would imagine, even up until the time whenever the crowdfunding campaign is. So go and be subscribed to the Board Game Geek page like I am right now. Speaking of other crowdfunding campaigns, do you have enough Tiny Epics in your life? I don't think you do. May 10, we have a new Tiny Epic Vikings. And with all Viking games that you are required to make, this one, just like the rest, has to have an area control mechanism. And just like the rest of very similar Viking games, it not only has to have area control, you also have to have some drafting. Mini Ragnarok. Mini Blood Rage. Anyway, so again, how do you compare? I mean, what is going to be the comparison to these other games of a fuller size and nature? Do you want a smaller, more portable version, a comparable version? I don't really know. But again, I mean, Gamelin Games has a niche, and they have a fan base that is enjoying their product line. And if it works, also, why try and fix it? So that's going to be launching in under a month, and we will see where it ends up. And again, how it compares to the larger, bigger brother projects of the same ilk. As I mentioned in the video over the weekend, I recently got my copy of Wonderland's War, and that's why Wonderland's War is on the Hotness right now. It is being delivered to backers all over the world, and it is receiving a relatively good response right now. I have not had the chance to play it yet, but this Wonderland-driven bag-building chip-based game is definitely unique, and I actually really think some of these Druid City games go under the radar and underappreciated. One of my favorites, actually, my favorite from them prior to this, is Sorcerer City, which is an underrated time-based Carcassonne almost, with magical powers and enemies. So to have this one, I backed this on crowdfunding. I did not go with the deluxe edition, though, because I didn't think miniatures were completely or even utterly necessary in this. But I did get the deluxe chips. They're slightly smaller than I was expecting. They're not fully sized poker chips, but they're nice. And hopefully I'll be getting it to the table in short order after I finish with Arc Nova. Or maybe this will supplant Arc Nova as well in terms of the order of operations to get to the table by the end of the month. So again, people are really liking it. It's on the Hotness because it looks fantastic, and supposedly right now it's playing fantastic too, with a little bit of area control, with a little bit of bag building, and I do love me some bag building as well. So give it a shout out. You're going to see it on the Hotness now for a little while because it's got an 8.5 rating and probably not going to stay that high, but it's probably going to stay around there. So check it out. Apart from that, we've got more of your usual suspects roundup on the Hotness right now. We've got the Great Wall. It just launched the Great Wall reprint over on GameFound. Now, the weird thing about this one is that so far they have offered nothing new. They're offering an upgrade pack, essentially, a fix pack as they are calling it, with a 2.0 rulebook and fixing of some of the cards that were for balance issues. But the interesting thing that I talked about on my roundup this past week is if you go over to the FAQ, this is really where the nitty gritty you need to really look out for. Any new content in this campaign? Well, we're monitoring it. We please wait for official updates for any information about additional content. So the additional content could have been that fix pack, but it also might be something else. But again, if you were going to do something else, my question in the past week was, why would you not announce it? I mean, I feel like if you had announced it, you wouldn't be sitting at 344,000 euros right now. You'd be sitting at like 1,344,000 euros. Because the original raised over 1 million, and this is going to do fine. But if you want to get your previous customers in this wave round of money, that's probably part of it too. So we'll see where this goes. Obviously then, if we're going to talk about the one on GameFound, we need to talk about the bigger one on GameFound, and that is Sleeping Gods Distant Skies. Speaking of over $1 million, that is over $1 million in under a week. Now, the interesting aspect of this is, especially when you compare those two campaigns head to head, they are offering new and reprint. Great Wall is just doing reprint. Now, Great Wall is also not doing the Meeple version, which is, there is a rumor apparently that the Meeple version will be available at retail at some point, maybe. So they're only doing the Sundrop or the Sundrop less miniatures. So that's that aspect. But I would argue that that is still a very good price for Sleeping Gods. And just the question is, do you need the first one if you're going to get the second one? The second one appears to be more interesting to me personally. I will probably be backing it. Actually, never mind. I am backing it right now. So shows how much I know. There you go. And there's some differences. You can check out the page. It talks a little bit about it in terms of the combat mechanics that you're not going to miss anymore. You don't need to control as many characters if you're doing solo. And there's going to be new things called wandering waypoints, wandering encounters, I believe is what it is. So again, different aspects, new aspects, and it looks solid. I'm just hoping that they don't do as many expansions here, but I hope that the second reveal that they talked about here, let's see if I can find it real quick for you guys. Probably not right there. On the 28th, hopefully is an expansion that is included. Probably not going to be included in the price, but I'd be surprised. I don't know. I was hoping both of it would be there, but one is hopefully going to be that. But at the same time, if it doesn't, I would be happy with just paying less too. So there you go. A little addition here at the end, a little snippet. I'm putting together my notes. On tour, QE, commodities, as well as Bites, a new expansion for Bites, or standalone, I'm not sure. Bites, new recipes, along with Kabuto Sumo Toll Mayhem. They're all packaged together from board game tables. Duh. That is their next upcoming Kickstarter. And that is coming sometime in May. So, there you go. That's your news roundup for the week. That's the stuff that you need to know, the stuff you may have missed out on, and the stuff that has caught my eye that seems really cool from many publishers and names that you're going to recognize, know, and just be aware of on a regular basis. So, again, put my shout out there. Stonemeyer Games, Leader Games, Mind Clash Games. Talk to your boy here. I'm super interested in your product, and I'd love to talk about it on my channel. I mean, hey, got to fire your shot sometime, right? I'm small, but man, I'm talking slightly louder than my size? I don't know. Whatever. You know what I'm saying. That's all I got. Have a great day. Have a great beginning of your week. It's almost my Friday because I worked all weekend. Stay classy. Thanks for tuning in. Hit the thumb button. I have a Patreon too, but you know, that's besides the fact. Weekly content though. Ish. I'm working on it. See you around. The announcements